and I think you say in your memorandum that your position now was absolutely critical in the cabinet and in the government's position, and that if you'd resigned, indeed if Colin Powell had resigned, the whole political complexion of the issue would have changed. Was there any point at which you thought you could not go along with this? That you had argued for a second resolution, that you felt that without it, it was going to be put the British government in an impossible position, and you didn't want to be part of it?
I never got to that point. I've been very anxious in all of this, not to put a gloss on what I was thinking at the time, which is, I mean, you're historians, extremely easy to do, and to try and remember what I was thinking at the time, and to ask those very close to me if they can remember. An absolutely fundamental point, which was resolved before this, was in respect of the role of the House of Commons. I'd been in, as I said, the House when the Falklands War arose, and whilst I supported the Falklands War, I thought it was preposterous that the debate on the Falklands War lasted 3 hours on a Saturday morning on a motion for the adjournment. I mean, I know the old saw was that there was a motion on the adjournment that led to Chamberlain's resignation, but that was in 1940, and the situation was different. Had I not got agreement, and I used to talk to Robin Cook about this, because on this we were absolutely agreed, that we had to have a series of debates on substantive resolutions in the House of Commons, and that any decision to take military action had to be on an explicit vote by the House of Commons, then I would not have been able to continue in my job. The fact that we did get that agreement, of course, meant that we had to make the case publicly. Did I ever think I'm going to resign over this? No, I didn't. I mean, we all have our bottom lines. Did I understand the nature of the responsibilities on me? Yes, I did, for sure, and weigh them very heavily. But in the event, I came to the decisions that I came to, and I said in my memorandum, I did so very reluctantly, but on what I judged to be the best evidence available at the time, and made my decision, and I made the statement to the House of Commons on the 17th of March and wound up the debate on the 18th of March. And as I say, that's my responsibility.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we've come pretty much to the end, but just before we do, I'll ask my other colleagues if they have a question. Martin, I think you have.
I just have one question, Mr. Straw. To what extent was your advice to the Prime Minister in this final phase, the advice you say is both in writing and in person, to what extent was it being discussed in the Cabinet? And what was the general tenor of Cabinet opinion?
It wasn't the minutes that I wrote to the Prime Minister, excuse me, the minutes that I wrote to the Prime Minister were not circulated to the Cabinet. Most of them, and I know you have copies of them, were pretty closely held because they had to be. But the wider issues were discussed in Cabinet, and each Cabinet meeting, I think there are 26 or 27 of them, had discussed Iraq, and there would have been a Cabinet meeting the previous Thursday, which I guess would have been the 13th of March, well, and the previous Thursday before that. If you're asking me, Sir Martin, was there a Cabinet or Cabinet Committee where my alternative to the Prime Minister was discussed, the answer to that is no.
And were your views in that specific sense known to colleagues, or was this something in a way which you had kept between yourself and the Prime Minister, the depth, if you like, of your concerns?
I think they were known to Jeff Hoon, and they would be known to other senior ministers. I mean, I can't say for certain, but I may well have talked to Mr. Brown about them. Would they be known more widely? No, because it's an eternal verity that afraid members of the cabinet sometimes, particularly if they're not directly involved in an issue, natter to their friends in the press, and it was extremely important in terms of the international diplomacy that we were speaking with one voice internationally and nationally.
And finally, with regard to those who did know, that little inner circle, what was their response? Did you find support from them?
Well, I was putting the alternatives forward on a contingency. And the contingency was that we wouldn't get a second resolution, and that we then judged that British involvement in the military action was not going to be feasible because we wouldn't get it through the House of Commons. And partly, I mean, there was a paradox that as the international climate moved one way, to a degree, certainly the parliamentary climate moved the other way. And whilst at the beginning of March, I judged that we would not have got a resolution through the House of Commons because of the debates in the Security Council, President Chirac, and then the evident effort that we made for the second resolution. Support in the House of Commons started to change. I mean, it was something that obviously the whips were measuring day by day.
Thank you.